All right, buckle up, everyone, because we've got some pretty big news coming out of the Bitcoin world today.
Big is an understatement, I'd say.
BitcoinOS just made a major breakthrough, and we're here to unpack it all for you.
They actually did it. Finally, after all this time, they verified a zero-knowledge proof
A ZK proof, right.
directly on the Bitcoin blockchain.
This is huge. I mean, it's being hailed as this monumental step towards a more programmable Bitcoin.
Exactly.
And the craziest part, they're claiming to do it all without changing Bitcoin's core code.
No soft fork, no contentious debates, just pure innovation layered on top.
Okay, so before we dive into the how and the why, let's make sure everyone's on the same page here.
Sounds good.
We've got Bitcoin, right? This digital gold, known for its simplicity and security.
The OG crypto, the one that started it all.
And then you have all these other blockchains out there doing fancy things with smart contracts, DeFi, all sorts of complex applications.
Trying to be everything to everyone.
What BitcoinOS is saying is, hey, we can have the best of both worlds. Bitcoin's rock-solid foundation, plus the power and flexibility of smart contracts.
The best of both worlds, exactly.
But how do they actually pull that off?
Well, they've created this ingenious system that combines regular Bitcoin with what are called ordinals.
Ordinals, huh? Okay, so this is where I start to get a little lost.
Think of ordinals as a way to attach extra information to a Satoshi, the smallest unit of a Bitcoin.
So it's like adding a little digital tag to each Satoshi.
You got it.
And what's on that tag?
In this case, it's a smart contract.
Whoa, hold on. A smart contract embedded in a Satoshi? That's mind-blowing.
It is pretty wild, right?
So instead of directly messing with Bitcoin's code, they're using these ordinals as a sort of workaround to introduce smart contract functionality.
Precisely.
That's really clever, but honestly, my head's already spinning a bit.
It's a lot to take in, for sure.
And where does the zero-knowledge proof come in?
Ah, that's the magic sauce.
Lay it on me.
A ZK proof allows you to prove something is true without revealing the underlying data.
Okay, give me an example, because that sounds like some kind of wizardry.
Imagine you want to prove you're old enough to buy a drink without showing your ID.
I like where this is going.
A ZK proof would let you do just that. Verify your age without revealing your birth date or any other personal info.
That's incredible. So in the context of BitcoinOS, the ZK proof is verifying that the smart contract embedded in the ordinal is legit, but it's keeping all the sensitive details hidden.
Exactly. It's all about proving the execution of the smart contract without compromising privacy.
So we're talking about potentially huge implications for things like data security and transparency on the blockchain.
Absolutely. It's a game changer.
Now, you mentioned earlier that BitcoinOS doesn't require any changes to Bitcoin's core code,
Right.
this no soft fork approach.
Right.
And you said they're really proud of this, so why is that such a big deal?
Well, changing Bitcoin's core rules is like walking into a hornet's nest.
You're going to get stung.
Big time. It leads to these huge debates and disagreements, even splits in the network, which nobody wants.
So by finding a way to add functionality without altering the fundamental rules, BitcoinOS is basically sidestepping all that drama.
Exactly. They're building on top of Bitcoin, not trying to change it.
Like building an extension on a house. You get new features without messing with the foundation.
Perfect analogy.
Okay, so I'm starting to grasp the how, but let's talk about the why, the what's in it for me part.
Sure.
What does this actually mean for someone who just holds Bitcoin, the average Joe? What kind of new things will we be able to do with our Bitcoin thanks to this?
This is where things get really exciting. Imagine your Bitcoin not just as a store of value, but as a programmable asset.
Okay, hold on a second.
You could use it to interact with decentralized applications, engage in more sophisticated financial transactions, even connect to other blockchains, all while still benefiting from Bitcoin's security.
So we're talking programmable tokens, smart contracts, maybe even DeFi,
Yeah.
all built on top of Bitcoin.
You got
That's a whole new ball game. Are we witnessing the birth of a brand new era for Bitcoin here?
It certainly has the potential.
Okay, my mind is officially blown, but before we get too carried away dreaming about this Bitcoin-powered future, I got to ask about this new token they keep mentioning, BOS.
Ah, yes, BOS.
Why do we need another token when we already have Bitcoin?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's one we'll be tackling right after this.
Stay tuned, folks. We're just getting started.
This is going to be good. All right, so BOS, it's this new token, and yeah, lots of people are scratching their heads about it.
Why another token, right? Like Bitcoin's already there.
Well, the developers, they say BOS is like the fuel, the energy that makes the whole BitcoinOS system go.
Okay, fuel, I get it, but
Yeah.
why not just use Bitcoin for that? Isn't that like way simpler?
That's the debate, right? See, Bitcoin, it has all these rules. It's kind of set in stone, very rigid.
Yeah.
BOS, on the other hand, it's programmable. They can tweak it, fine-tune it, make it work perfectly for what BitcoinOS needs.
So Bitcoin is like the foundation of a house, rock solid, but BOS is like the plumbing, the wiring, all the stuff that makes the house actually livable.
That's a great way to put it.
So with BOS, they can do things they couldn't easily do with Bitcoin itself, like what, controlling the supply, adding staking, maybe even governance.
Exactly. They get to create a whole economic system just for BitcoinOS.
But, okay, there's got to be a catch, right?
There's always a catch. And with BOS, the big one is centralization.
Centralization, huh?
Yeah, if a small group of people or, one big entity ends up controlling most of the BOS tokens, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose of decentralization.
Right, because then it's not really decentralized anymore.
Exactly.
So that's one worry. What else?
Well, there's a whole speculation thing.
Yeah, people buying and selling just to make a quick buck.
Right. And if that happens, it could make the whole system unstable and distract from the real goal, which is, making Bitcoin more useful.
So it's a tightrope walk. Got to make BOS valuable enough that people want to use it, but not so valuable that it just becomes another meme coin or something.
Exactly. Got to strike that balance.
Easier said than done, I bet.
For sure, but that's where we got to stay informed, right? Do our own research, not just blindly believe the hype.
Absolutely don't trust, verify, as they say.
Now, we've talked a lot about what BitcoinOS is and why BOS exists, but I'm curious about the nitty-gritty technical details.
Yeah, how are they actually doing this without touching Bitcoin's code? It still feels like magic to me.
Well, it all comes back to those ordinals, remember?
Uh-huh, those little tags attached to Satoshis.
Right, they're using those to store and execute the smart contract logic.
So it's like they're building this parallel system on top of Bitcoin, but without actually messing with Bitcoin itself.
Exactly. Imagine you build a high-speed train line above an existing highway.
You're adding a whole new layer of transportation without touching the original road.
You got it, and that's basically what BitcoinOS is doing.
That's a really cool analogy. I'm starting to see how it all fits together.
But like any complex system, there are going to be some bumps in the road.
What kind of bumps are we talking about?
Well, scalability, for one, even though they're not changing Bitcoin's rules directly, they're still limited by how fast Bitcoin can process transactions.
Yeah, like if suddenly everyone starts using BitcoinOS, things could get clogged up, right?
Exactly. Transactions could get slower, fees could go up, it's a potential bottleneck.
Like too many cars trying to use the same highway at the same time.
Precisely. And then there's the cost of using those zero-knowledge proofs.
Ah, right. Those are computationally expensive, aren't they?
They can be, and if those costs get passed on to users, it could make BitcoinOS too expensive for, everyday transactions.
So they got to make it efficient and affordable.
Exactly, and that's where BOS comes back into the picture. Remember, it's the fuel that makes the system go.
Right, by incentivizing people to run the infrastructure and do those complex calculations.
Exactly, they can keep the costs down and hopefully make sure the whole system can scale smoothly.
So many moving parts. It's a lot to keep track of.
It is, and that's why it's important to stay skeptical, keep asking questions.
Agreed. Critical thinking is key in this space.
Now, one thing I found really interesting is the potential role of Cardano in all this.
Cardano? Why Cardano? I thought they were like rivals, both trying to do this smart contract thing.
You'd think so, right? But Charles Hoskinson, the guy behind Cardano, he's actually been pretty open to collaborating with Bitcoin.
Really? I didn't see that coming.
He sees the potential for what he calls hybrid applications, where you combine the strengths of both blockchains.
So Bitcoin security and decentralization, plus Cardano's flexibility and all its smart contract features.
Exactly. Instead of competing, they could actually complement each other.
That's a really interesting idea. But what would that look like in practice?
Imagine being able to send Bitcoin from your wallet and have it automatically converted into a token on Cardano.
So you could use your Bitcoin on Cardano's DeFi platforms or whatever.
Exactly. You could lend it out, earn interest, maybe even use it as collateral to borrow other cryptocurrencies.
Wow, that would open up a lot of possibilities.
It would, and we could see decentralized exchanges that let you trade between Bitcoin and Cardano assets seamlessly.
Like a bridge between the two blockchains.
Exactly. But building that bridge It's not going to be easy.
I can imagine they're pretty different systems.
They are. There are lots of technical challenges to overcome, security, scalability, making sure it's easy for people to use.
That if they can pull it off, it could be a game changer.
For sure, it could reshape the whole crypto landscape.
It really feels like we're on the cusp of something big here.
It does, and it'll be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, but there's still one big piece of the puzzle we need to talk about.
What's that?
BOS, the token. We need to get into the nitty-gritty details. What are its features? How is it designed? And, what are the potential risks we need to be aware of?
Let's do it. BOS is a crucial part of this whole story, and it deserves its own deep dive.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks here.
Yeah.
BOS, the token. It's clearly a big deal for BitcoinOS.
It is. It's like the beating heart of the whole system.
But I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Why a separate token? Why not just use Bitcoin?
Right. Lots of people are asking that. The BitcoinOS team, they say it comes down to flexibility.
Flexibility, okay.
Bitcoin, it's great, it's secure, but it's also kind of rigid. You can't really change the rules.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of the point of Bitcoin, right?
Exactly. But with BOS, they have more freedom. They can tweak the economic incentives, control the supply, even add things like staking or governance.
So Bitcoin is the foundation, solid, unchanging, and BOS is like the tools they use to build on top of that foundation.
Exactly. It gives them a lot more options.
But more options, that can also mean more risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are the downsides of having this separate token?
Well, the big one, as we touched on earlier, is centralization.
Right, if a small group ends up controlling most of the BOS, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of decentralization.
Exactly. And that's something to watch out for.
For sure. What else?
Yeah, there's the whole speculation thing, people buying and selling BOS just to make a quick profit.
Yeah, that's always a risk with new tokens.
It is. And if that happens, it could create instability, price swings, pump and dumps, all that.
And that could distract from the real goal of BitcoinOS, which is to make Bitcoin more useful.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a balancing act. They need to make BOS valuable, but not too valuable.
Got to find that sweet spot.
Exactly. And transparency is key here. The more open they are about how BOS works, the better.
Speaking of transparency, you mentioned earlier that Sovereign, this Bitcoin DeFi platform, is involved with BOS.
Right. They've been working closely with the BitcoinOS team from the start.
So what exactly is their role?
Well, they're handling a lot of the technical stuff, and they're also going to be in charge of distributing the BOS tokens.
So they have a lot of influence over how this whole thing plays out.
They do, and that's something to keep in mind. It's important to understand the relationship between Sovereign and BitcoinOS.
Right, because if Sovereign has too much control, it could raise questions about decentralization again.
Exactly. It all comes back to transparency. The more we know about how decisions are being made, the better.
Makes sense. So after diving deep into all of this, BitcoinOS, BOS, the whole shebang, I got to ask, what's your overall take? Is this a good thing for Bitcoin?
It's still early days. It's like we're standing at the edge of a new frontier. There's a lot of potential, but also a lot of unknowns.
So it's like a fork in the road.
Right.
One path leads to a more complex, programmable Bitcoin. The other keeps Bitcoin as this simple, secure store of value.
That's a great way to put it. And which path Bitcoin takes, well, that's up to the community, the developers, the investors, all of us.
It's an exciting time to be in this space, that's for sure. Lots of big changes happening.
It is, and who knows what the future holds, but one thing's for certain, Bitcoin is evolving. It's not standing still.
That's a great point. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. Thanks for breaking it all down for us.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk Bitcoin.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us. We encourage you to keep learning, keep exploring, and as always, stay curious.
And don't forget to do your own research.
Absolutely. Until next time, folks,